I'm Terry Shepard. Being a confident podcast guest is a skill that can be learned. And that's why I wrote How to Become a Dynamic Podcast Guest and Sell Stuff. It's a sweet and short primer that teaches you about the gear, the appearance, and the messaging that can grab and hold today's micro attention spans and motivate your listeners to take action. How to Become a Dynamic Podcast Guest and Sell Stuff. The digital version is just $1.99 at Amazon. Grab your copy today and sell more books tomorrow.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
A single letter can carry a declaration of love, the promise of a new beginning, or news that changes a family forever. In Laura Jensen Walker's new historical novel, The Postmistress of Puddlington, Hester Smith knows better than most the extraordinary power hidden inside an ordinary envelope. In 1934, she happily pedals through the quiet lanes of a Dorset village, delivering the hopes, secrets, and sorrows of her neighbors. But when war reaches England's shores, Hester's familiar route becomes a daily test of courage, as she is asked to deliver messages no one should ever have to receive. As battlefield tragedy strikes close to home and a shocking death unsettles the village, Hester joins an unforgettable circle of women, including a vicar's wife and the bohemian lady of the manor, who must find strength in one another as their world changes forever. Laura Jensen Walker is an Agatha and Lefty Award-nominated writer whose work ranges from lighthearted mysteries to deeply researched historical fiction. We'll also talk about her forthcoming book, The Pilgrimage of Primrose Honeychurch, available for pre-order right now, wherever cool books are sold. Laura Jensen Walker, it's great to be with you again. Thanks for the conversation.
Thanks for having me back, Terry.
Give us the 411 on how the Postmistress of Puddlington came to be.
So it goes way back, actually almost 50 years. I was stationed in the Air Force in England as a young single woman, early 20s. And at that point, of course, we had just started getting computers, but there was no email. There was no internet. And as a young woman stationed overseas, the best thing to get was letters from home. So me and my fellow GIs, we'd go to the mailroom. Is there a letter from mom, or is there a letter from my sister? And we'd send these letters. And that was our only form of communication. And other than the occasional phone call, but it was very expensive. So that was like twice a year, birthday and Christmas. And so at that point, I had always dreamed of being a writer, but I'm in the Air Force. I'm a clerk typist in the Air Force. I'm not a writer. And I thought, someday I want to write. I want to be an author. And I thought I would love to write a story about a young woman in the military and her adventures. And I want to include letters home. And so that little wisp of an idea started nearly 50 years ago. So I'm giving my age. I turned 70 in a few months, but I don't look it. But that was the impetus years ago. But then as time went on, I thought, I'm not in my 20s anymore. I think I want the main character to be the postmistress who delivers the letters. But I still kept the semi-epistolary feel of it, that there are letters throughout the book, back and forth. And then I thought, women on the home front. A lot of the men went to war, but the women had to keep things going and everything they went through. So I came up with a cast of characters of 5 women. And the wonderful thing, I love Lady Minerva Winterbottom. She's the bohemian lady of the manor. I fell in love with her name first. We have dear friends who live in Dorset, and we've been visiting them for years. And one time she happened to mention her grandmother's name, and I went, Minerva Winterbottom? Can I use that name, please? And she said, sure. So I thought, I just wanted her to be really cool, a former suffragette and just a cool woman. Then she was born. And then Hester, the postmistress, very bookish like me, only she has a fondness for Dickens, which I do not. And then I had the 2 young women, the woman in the military, Nora, and then her best friend Violet, who becomes a land girl, and then the vicar's wife. So because I'm a pantser, characters are always the first thing for me. And then the book unfolds through the characters. So it started almost 50 years ago, and I actually began writing it in the early days of lockdown when the world was on fire and we were all scared. What the heck is going on? And I needed to escape to my favorite place in the world, which is England. And when people were doing the right thing, when they all banded together to do the right thing, let's put up the blackout curtains. Let's do what we need to do. So that's why it came about.
You have said that your love for words began when you read 103 books in first grade.
Yes.
What do you remember about the moment you first imagined you might become a writer?
Again, I was 5 years old in the first grade, Miss Vopolinsky's first grade class in Racine, Wisconsin. And of course, back then it was see Dick run, see Jane, that kind of thing. But I just loved, my dad instilled in us a love of reading. I started reading at just like when I was just shy of 4. So I began reading at 3 years old. And so then to start finding books and going, oh, there's stories. And then they got more interesting, but then see Dick Jane run. And I just said, that's what I want to do someday. Someday I want to do that. That dream has been with me my entire life. And gosh, and now Primrose, see, I'm getting confused. The double P books. The Postmistress of Puddlington is book number 25. So it finally happened and my dreams have been fulfilled and I'm living the life I love, writing stories.
You have been called a genre butterfly.
Yes.
What excites you about moving between mystery, historical fiction, and women's fiction?
It's always the character. And actually, I have to tell you, Katrina McPherson is the one who dubbed me a genre butterfly. And I had never heard that term. And I went, I love that. But I do. I flit from one to, and it's just a character comes in my head, a story comes in my head, and it's, oh. And I will honestly tell you, Terry, my entire writing career has been like a series of happy accidents. My first book was published in 1997, and that was nonfiction humor, what they called domestic humor back then. The title was Dated Jekyll, Married Hyde. So it was a lighthearted, funny book about the difference between men and women. I never planned to write that. I went to a writer. I was a journalist. I was a reporter. And then I went to this writers conference and I just started playing around and it just and then humor. And I wrote 10 nonfiction humor books. And then it's but novels. I love novels. I love novels. I want to write a novel, but I don't know how. How do you even start? Even though I was such an avid reader, I read at least 2 books a week, usually. I'm just such a reader. But I was terrified because when you have a dream that you've had since the first grade, what if you don't have what it takes to make that dream come true? What if you don't have the talent? What if you don't have the skill? So I was really, even though I adored fiction, I was so scared to try. And then I went to this conference and the speaker said it was writing a novel. And he said, before you even begin to write, you got to have an idea how the book is going to end. And I don't agree with that now, but at the time that freed up my fear. And I went, okay, I left the conference, went and sat outside and I wrote the opening lines to what became my first chick lit novel. So I wrote funny chick lit. I went from funny domestic humor to funny chick lit. And then I stopped writing for a decade and came back and did cozy mysteries because a friend said, oh, you'd be great at that. You love England. You love tea. You love a dog. And I went, oh, I could never do a mystery. Mystery is all about plot. And I'm not a plotter. I'm a pantser. And guess what? I did. And who knew? And then the historical fiction, like I said, I love England. I'm such a rabid Anglophile. And you had me on before for Death of a Flying Nightingale, which was my first historical fiction. And I just loved writing that and shining a spotlight on these overlooked women. But the Postmistress of Puddlington has been the book of my heart because it was the single most joyous writing experience I've had in my career. Often when I'm writing, you go, oh gosh, as a pantser, now what? What happens next? Where do I go? What the heck? And you get stuck and you go, what am I going to do? That never happened with the Postmistress of Puddlington. Every day, these women, their stories unfolded. And I say to my husband, oh, guess what Hester did today? Guess what Violet did? Or guess what? And it was such a joy. So I really love this book a lot because it was joyful experience from start to finish.
We're talking about the Postmistress of Puddlington with its author, our special guest, Laura Jensen Walker. And that's her website, laurajensenwalker.com. Did wartime postal workers receive any preparation for delivering telegrams or letters containing such devastating news?
That's a very good question. I'm guessing so. All I knew was that I wanted to demonstrate the big difference there was from when she just delivered regular, ordinary mail to she had to deliver the telegrams from the War Department saying, your son has been killed. And there were times when, in one case in particular, it was a friend's son and she had to deliver that. And afterwards, she just wound up at the beach, just sobbing her eyes out because so many of the young boys of the village had been lost. That happened all the time. And yet at the same time, she was there for them and she was giving them a shoulder when sometimes the door would slam in her face because they didn't want to see that telegram. No, they didn't want to know, but that was part and parcel of it.
Without giving away spoilers, how would you describe Hester's character arc as the war moves from a distant threat to a personal reality?
Hester she had a dreadful mother who had always wanted a boy and was disappointed that she had a daughter. So growing up, she felt very less than. Her mother didn't see her. And when her parents died, she took over her father's postal route. But she was always a very timid, bookish person. Books were her salvation. That's what she did. Her fiance was killed in the Great War, so she didn't get married. So she was a spinster, as they called it then. But as the war went on, she came into her own. She just grew and she became this very strong, amazing woman. She takes in a young evacuee from London. She'd always wanted children, but she didn't get married. So she takes in this young boy evacuee. She just came into her own. This is a fun part. Later in the book, she learned there was this, you're a martial arts person, so you'll appreciate this. Have you ever heard of suffragette? I bet you haven't. So in suffragettes, way back when, they had to learn this special form of jujitsu because they were being attacked by men when they were protesting and marching. And so Minerva, the lady of the manor, had been a suffragette. She learned it. Hester runs into a situation where she needed to learn how to defend herself. So she said, would you teach me? And so Minerva takes the women of the WI and says, here, this is what. And so I have a scene, and that was fun to look that up and do that research to find out and to describe how it was done. And because I'm not a martial arts person, I know nothing about that, and so then here's Hester kicking ass. It's like, wow, I didn't plan that for my timid little sweet bookish Hester. But by the time, as the book goes on, she is, and she's become quite a force to be reckoned with.
Why do you think that this book flowed so freely and easily from your muse when I know that some of your 25 books had to be a slog?
I think because there's a couple reasons. First, it's set in England, which is my favorite place on earth. So it's set in England, and I love everything about England. I love the tea. I love the pubs. I love all of that. But also, to be very honest and transparent, I did not know this until the pandemic happened, but due to a traumatic event when I was young, 19, I was attacked and I thought I dealt with this for years. And then the pandemic happened and PTSD just went off the charts and I was a wreck. And I was so frightened. Back then when that attack happened many years ago, I was afraid I would be killed. I was afraid for my life. I feared for my life. I coped with that. I moved on. Life went on. But then all these years later, suddenly here's the pandemic. And it's now anybody who came up to me and breathed on me could kill me. And I just flipped out. And so that's why I said, I've got to go somewhere safe. Where's safe? In my home, in my backyard, in England. And so I went to a time when, like I said, and when the early days of the pandemic, there was so much misinformation and idiotic behavior and just craziness. And I thought, I need safety. I need to feel safe. And England has always done that for me. And World War II, like I said, when they put up the blackout curtains together, when they did the rationing, when they all worked together. And so it was that sense of safety and just community that I fell in love with. And these women all doing this stuff that the men were not there to do. And that's, I think, why. I was definitely having a big PTSD episode when I started writing this, but this was my escape and this was my safety.
Have you found a writing career to be therapeutic?
Very much. Yeah, I love it. If I didn't write, I don't know what I'd do. I worked for the state of California for a little over a decade, and I discovered a couple years ago that I'm neurodivergent, which I never knew what that meant. I didn't even know what it was. It can sometimes mean you're on the autism spectrum, but not always. It's if you have sensory issues, your brain just behaves differently than a typical brain. And so there are a lot of things like I could never understand technology. Do a spreadsheet. When I worked at the state, I had to do spreadsheets. I would go in the bathroom and cry because I said, I don't know how the heck to do that. And I felt stupid. I felt like I was stupid, but I wasn't stupid when I wrote. I've always written. The writing has always come. It's just comes out of me naturally. So I knew that I was a good writer, and that was what I was good at. But doing spreadsheets or math or technology or science, no, does not fit with me. But I did it, and I'm glad I did. And my husband thanks me daily. Thank you for working for the state because we have good medical now. I'm glad I did that. I got a little pension, a little modest pension, and we have great medical. So I'm glad I did it. But I'll tell you, while I was working, I was just longing to be home writing always. This is who I am. This is what I was created to do, is to be a writer.
What happened to your self-esteem when the doctor told you that was going on inside your head? Was that freeing for you?
It was so freeing. It was incredibly freeing because suddenly I understood all my little weird odd duck quirks that I've had over the years. Like I have food texture issues. There's certain foods I cannot eat and won't. There's temperature issues. I can't stand heat at all. And it's like, I can't stand crowds and noise. And I have to run, and it's like fight or flight. And I just thought I was weird. So to find out that there's actually a reason behind it, it was so freeing. And actually that segues into, that is why I wrote The Pilgrimage of Primrose Honeychurch, because at 70 years old, she's 70 years old, and a lot of me is in her. It's, she has sensory issues. She has these, and it's just like, I wanted to show a person learning something about herself and then how that unfolds. So it was actually a huge relief to find that out, that there's a reason I am the way I am.
Let's talk a little bit about the Pilgrimage of Primrose Honeychurch. What can you share about that story?
First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the opening line because I love it. Primrose Honeychurch collected words the way others collected seashells. Primrose loved words. A lot of Primrose is me, not all of her, because she's a curmudgeon and I'm never curmudgeonly. Although some people might disagree. But again, I wanted somebody who loved words and loved books. And on my bucket list, we all have our bucket list, I have always wanted to go to Hay-on-Wye, Wales. That is known as the town of books. It's like the largest concentration of used bookstores in the world. And it was created in the early 70s. And now every May they have a huge book festival there. But while I was stationed there, I didn't know about it. And on our trips back there, the last time we went, which has been like almost a decade ago, I'd heard of it, but we couldn't fit into our schedule. So I thought, I'm going to let my character do something that I have not gotten to do that I want to do. And she journeys to Hay-on-Wye, and she's a woman who's fearful. She'd never been on a plane before. So she's got a lot of fears, but it becomes this journey of transformation for her. And again, I love showing women come into their own and having their lives changed and being transformed. And that's what that story is, with a huge love of books. At the beginning of every chapter, this just came out of the blue. I thought, that'd be fun, because she loves words so much. I start like the first chapter at the top. It says, I wanted to go through the alphabet. So the first word is abecedarian. And then there's a definition. And so each chapter, I went through the alphabet, but there was more than 26 chapters. So then I put in Cornish words and English words and expressions. But that was just, so if you love books and a transformative journey, this is definitely something. And being at Hay-on-Wye in the page, I still hope to get there someday.
What do your readers say that they like best about your writing?
Usually it's the characters. In my recent cozy from February, it's called The Alphabet Sleuths, which has been said it's the Golden Girls meets the Thursday Murder Club. So I have four very unique women characters in a retirement community. But that's funny. There's a lot of humor in there. The opening line, I love opening lines. The opening line to that one was, Claire Reynolds hadn't planned to kill a man that day, but sometimes stuff happens. So you're right away like, what? Now, the difference is the Postmistress of Puddlington, that was very atmospheric, setting the scene about the place. So there wasn't a funny opening line or a clever opening line. It was just showing her bicycling. But so when I do my mysteries, it's the humor, but it's always the characters. Even when I read some reviews, although you're not supposed to read your reviews, I know, but we do. People always say, gosh, I love those characters. They were funny. And in fact, with Alphabet Sleuths, it was the community of women. I actually even liked that more than the mystery, because it was such a cool, interesting group of women and the friendship. And so they talk about how I do friendships and how I bring women into their own. And so it's a lot about the characters. My stuff is very character driven. With the Postmistress of Puddlington, a few people have said it's such a lovely, gentle read. Now, there was one reviewer who said it was a little too gentle for me. It's World War II. I was expecting some grit, and I was expecting more like Kate Quinn. It's like, sorry, I don't do gritty. So it's a friend of mine recently said, I like gentle. Today, the way the world is right now, gentle is nice. Gentle is a refreshing change. And I'll be honest with you, Terry. So because you know how much I love World War II fiction and World War II England, one of my favorite books of all time is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. I've read that at least 3 times. And it's a completely epistolary novel. It's all letters. But when Severn House, my publisher, came out with Puddlington, in the description, they said, a must read for fans of the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. And that made me cry, because it was like, one of my favorite books. And you're saying that people who read that have to. So I just was crying and all verklempt, because wow. But my stuff is not, I don't do gritty. I don't do dark and disturbing. I actually tried for a new mystery to go dark in one way, and it just didn't work.
The best way to learn about Laura Jensen Walker's work is to visit her website, laurajensenwalker.com. We've been talking about 2 stories today, the Postmistress of Puddlington and the forthcoming book, The Pilgrimage of Primrose Honeychurch, which is available now for pre-orders wherever cool books are sold. Laura Jensen Walker, thanks so much for the conversation.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.